stats. Welcome to the podcast you've been waiting for. Great perspective and exclusive interviews.
It's a hard job for those guys because it's happening fast.
The kind of Saints insight and fun commentary you won't get anywhere else.
We've got plenty of technology to speed things up.
It's time to kick off your Been There, Done That Saints podcast, where we hand it off to our host, Mike Nabors, and Super Bowl winning linebacker, Scott Shanle.
Proud of these guys.
Man, I'm pushing it. I'm trying to be back as fast as I can. At the same time, understanding that things have to heal.
The thoughts of quarterback Drew Brees. We are the only podcast that goes one-on-one with Drew Brees since he was injured a few weeks back. I'm Mike Nabors. Welcome to another rendition of your Been There, Done That podcast. I'm going to bring in my team, producer Justin Thomas and my co-host Scott Shanle. We'll hear from Brees. We're going to hear from our one-on-one with Quan Alexander. Brees talks about watching, I don't know if you want to call that a football game, a week ago, and his advice to Taysom Hill. And Quan Alexander talks about his great situation that he's delved into since coming over from the San Francisco 49ers. But first, let's talk about whatever the hell that was in Denver, because I'm sorry, NFL. I understand you have to be strict with COVID. I understand your protocol, and I understand that you've been aggressive. You know, everything's been on time from free agency to the draft. You know, you were good about eliminating preseason games. You started on time. But Shanle, you got to have a friggin' quarterback in a football game. Find these guys. Take away draft picks. I'm sorry.
Oh, no question. You know, Mike, there is no team in the NFL that could win a game without a quarterback. I don't care who you are. We absolutely found out what the quarterback position means to any team. There's a reason why those guys make as much money as they make. The elite ones, not many guys walking on the face of the earth that can do what they do. And the Saints defense should have done what they've done. In all honesty, when you don't have to respect a team throwing the ball and they can only run a certain amount of plays, that game's going to be over before it even starts. But to your point with the NFL, my whole problem with it, Mike, and I said it on our CST pregame show with Victor before the game, my problem with it is I feel like it's because it was the Denver Broncos the NFL did that. Not because they have a vendetta against them, but because the Denver Broncos aren't vying for a 1 seed in the AFC, because they have no playoff hopes, because they're not going to contest the Chiefs. Because all you got to do is look at the Baltimore Ravens. They moved games. They moved mountain after mountain to get the Ravens and Steelers game on because Lamar Jackson had COVID and then other people. But I think it was more about what the Denver Broncos were in the eye of the NFL than anything else. And it wasn't really fair to the Denver Broncos.
Absolutely not. I mean, it was an absolute joke. And you know what? The NFL takes pride in, the quality of play, allegedly, and it just takes away from a credibility standpoint. And everybody loses in this. And Justin, I don't know how you feel. How'd you feel watching this football game?
To me, well, like Scott said, first, it's amazing how instrumental the QB position is. And like Scott said, that's why they get paid a lot. That's also why the MVP candidate every year is usually a QB. To me, it was like almost like an NFL team playing a college team or a high school team. It was boring. And I believe that the broadcast turned away. They went to another game in the middle of the third quarter, I think, because it was so boring. Hopefully we don't see something like that again. It's kind of sad to see certain teams like the Ravens get what seems like special privilege over the Broncos.
Absolutely. And Shanle, I'm a big proponent of, if I'm going to criticize something, I'm going to have a solution. And here's my solution. I kind of touched on it early. You can't delay the game because that would punish the Saints, and they haven't done anything wrong. You got to punish the Broncos. But if these quarterbacks keep testing negative, hell, let two of them play, pick the two, and fine the heck out of them, take draft picks away, but you can't take them all away. It's just ridiculous. I mean, the kid, Hinton, he's coming off the practice squad, and if you walk down the hallway in the Denver headquarters, half the team probably wouldn't recognize him. It's ridiculous.
No, it was really unfair to him. And, for me, the way they called that game was even more unfair to him. Pat Shurmur was their offensive coordinator. Someday Hinton's going to walk up to him and punch him in the face for the game he called, making him throw the ball deep when he hasn't thrown a ball in how many years. Yeah. It was not called smart as far as the game plan went. But, I really thought, and I thought the NFL would delay the game by a day. I thought they would tell the Saints, hey, stay in town. Because the next day, all the Saints or all the Broncos quarterbacks that were held out tested negative. So they could have played. They tested the next morning. Their results came back. They could have played the next day on a Monday, and we would have been in for a much better game. I still think the Saints would have won, but it would have been a much better game.
Absolutely. And, when you look at this football game defensively, I think what good teams do is they beat bad teams badly. And the defense played well, but as a defense, I mean, do you feel great after this game? Do you?
I think it adds to your confidence. Anytime you go out and you play football, I think as a defensive player, I put myself in their position. And I would tell myself, you know what? It's not my fault. It's not my fault that those quarterbacks didn't mask up. It's not my fault that the NFL said, hey, you have to play. All I can do is go out there and line up where I'm supposed to line up and make the tackles I'm supposed to make. And the Saints defense played the way they should against a quarterbackless team. That's not their problem. It's a win in the record book. It's going to go a long way in securing the number one seed. So I think as a player, you feel good anytime you win, no matter what the circumstances are. But you also understand that you don't get many of those freebies throughout the course of your NFL career.
Absolutely. We're going to hear from Drew Brees coming up. I talked to him one on one after every game and during his injury, and we got him at home in his living room a couple weeks ago, and I got him in his home office because the Brees boys, I think, were being a little loud, so we got him in his office. But interesting takes on watching the game from home and his advice to Taysom Hill. We'll get to that along with my one on one with Quan Alexander, so a snippet from that. But Shanle, let's move past this. We let our anger go with the Denver debacle, even though the Saints win and they've won 8 games in a row now. But now you have the Atlanta Falcons. And speaking of the defense, I mean, it was a coming out party for them in a lot of ways a couple weeks ago, especially Cam Jordan, that D line against Matt Ryan. But man, it's tough to beat a team twice in one year. It's got to be even tougher to beat them twice in 3 weeks and do it on their field.
Yeah, I don't know why the NFL does this. Would they put division games 3 weeks apart, 2 weeks apart, 3 weeks apart? It doesn't make it very fun because what I like to see is playing in the first 5 weeks of the season, then maybe playing the last 5 weeks of the season because it's a completely different matchup. There's different injuries, there's different personnel on the field, there's different things that have happened during the course of that time. So I hate that they've done this, especially in this game that's a rivalry. I like to see it spaced out a little bit more. But what I think you're going to see this time around is you're going to see the Atlanta Falcons protect Matt Ryan much more, whether it's keeping blockers in, not throwing the ball as much, because they certainly can't drop back and have him get sacked 10 times again and expect to win. The Atlanta defense played really good last week against the Raiders, took the ball away 5 times. I think that's going to be their formula again. Run the ball and hopefully play good defense against a Taysom Hill-led offense that didn't really throw the ball much or throw it well last week.
All right, I'm a little confused after the game because I asked Drew Brees about the game plan given Denver's situation at quarterback. Did it change? He said no, but then Sean Payton and Taysom Hill kind of hinted that it was scaled back a little bit because in a game like that, you don't want to make a big mistake. I guess maybe they're both right. Maybe you didn't really change the game plan. You just kind of toned it down a little bit, maybe.
I wonder what probably happened during the week is, with Taysom at quarterback, everybody understands the Saints are going to run the ball more than when Drew Brees at quarterback. So Drew probably understood, hey, we're going to run the ball a lot this week. Well, when they got to Denver and the situation unfolded with Denver wasn't going to have a quarterback, it sounded like after the game where Taysom said, I got together with Coach Payton last night. The game plan changed. We both agreed that this was the best way to win the game. And that best way, I'm sure Coach Payton told him, listen, they don't have a quarterback. The only way we lose this game is by getting a sack fumble or you throw an interception. Maybe they get a pick six. That's the only way you lose games like this. And I'm sure in that meeting, they really said, if we were going to run the ball 60-40 before, maybe now we're going to go 70-30 and let the defense win this game.
All right, Taysom Hill, did a lot of good things in the first game against Atlanta, but obviously they watched tape on him. How do you think they're going to adjust to Taysom Hill the second time around? Taysom the sequel against the Atlanta Falcons.
Here's the thing, and I said it during the Denver game, that I don't know if any team why they would play zone defense against Taysom
Yeah.
because when you play zone as a quarterback, your receivers find the open zone and you spit the ball. It's pitch and catch as long as you're being protected. Denver played a lot of man, and you saw Taysom hold the ball. He double clutched the ball because in man those windows are tight. You have to throw very accurately. You have to throw on time. And he just didn't have that confidence. And a lot of it comes from him not having the experience of doing it. But I look for Atlanta to play a lot of man-to-man this time around and bring more pressure.
Do you think it helps Taysom that he beat the Falcons a couple weeks ago? Will that be we talk about the scheduling quirk, but that has to give him a little confidence because he's already beaten them once.
No, for sure. And the fact, the more he plays, any player, the more experience you get, the more game experience, the more confidence you get. But we haven't seen Taysom yet have to throw the ball, and that's what I think. I feel like all Saints fans are sitting there. The supporters and the doubters are all saying we need to see if Taysom can throw the ball. Now, Heck, I hope until Drew gets back, the defense can keep winning games and the Saints can keep running the ball. But at some point, what if Atlanta gets up 14-0 or 10-0? Can Taysom Hill throw the ball effectively, consistently? And I think that's what everybody's waiting to see from him.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game, no doubt about it. Let's talk about Drew Brees. I talked to him, like I said, the last couple of weeks from his home after the game. And first off, let's get his thoughts on helping Taysom Hill. And Taysom Hill has said repeatedly since he's taken over the starting spot that every step of the way Brees has been there to help him. I asked Brees about that process of mentoring Taysom and the other quarterbacks.
The quarterback position is a unique one because, whoever is the quarterback in the huddle, like he's got to be the guy, right? And it's his style, it's his leadership, it's his command. And so in a way, as a quarterback, man, you got to step back and let that guy just take charge and be himself. But at the same time, man, I want to be such a support system for all the QBs.
I think that is a great way to handle it because, Shanle, you know what? You have some quarterbacks in this league. I'm not helping that guy. And you have some that are probably a little overzealous. Seems like Brees is the happy medium there.
Well, I think Drew realizes, I'm going to be honest with you, Mike, when you're a veteran player and you know your time is almost over because of your age or your contract or whatever it is, it is a lot easier to help guys. And I'm not saying Drew wouldn't have done this, 10 years ago, but when you sit in a room and you guys all have the same goal and you guys are all trying to vie for a championship, and that is the ultimate goal of every single person in the organization, this is what you get. You get great players, Hall of Fame players, supporting every single player in the room and trying to help them and knowing, you know what, if I make you the best player you can be and you end up being better than me, then so be it. But a lot of guys don't have that personality. I think just it helps when you're an older player, when you're a veteran player, and you realize where your time is on the train ride of the NFL, as Coach Payton would say. It makes it easier to do that. But are you kidding me? There's so many guys around the league that I think would be the better versions of themselves if they could sit in a room with Drew Brees and have him teach them the things he knows.
So you're saying Garrett Grayson might not have been aided step by step like Taysom Hill?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Exactly. Now, that's the highest draft pick Drew's ever had to sit in a room with. But I can tell you right now that there were things that Drew said, oh, if you only knew. But I'm not telling you because you were a high enough draft pick and they think they're trying to get me out of here. Nope, I'm not saying anything. Let you figure it out on your own, young buck.
Wow, interesting stuff. And here's another thing. I thought, I understand why you don't put Jameis Winston in against the Broncos because the only way you could conceivably, even though I can't imagine losing that game, is you have Jameis going all 30 for 30 out there, throwing picks left and right. But I do feel he should have seen some action. And I wonder how quick the trigger will be. As you mentioned, if Taysom Hill is forced to throw the ball and is not successful, this is going to become interesting in the next few weeks because, Jameis Winston, the caliber of quarterback he is with his experience and his talent, he's ready to go too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And Jameis is going to be one of those guys who I think Jameis will get to play if Taysom struggles throwing the ball when they have to come back. When they have to throw the ball, and Coach Payton just says, you know what, we got to get somebody in there with better arm talent, and that would be Jameis. I don't think anybody would argue that. Taysom's best friend right now is this running game. Latavius Murray and this offensive line were outstanding last week. But Taysom's Hill best friend right now is this Saints defense because they are giving teams no room. I mean, they are giving them no room to breathe. And when teams aren't scoring the ball, offensively, it takes all the pressure off you as a play caller. And you're not feeling like you have to throw the ball. You're not feeling like you have to get creative offensively. So if this defense keeps playing like this, I think you'll see Taysom as the quarterback. And I don't know if you're going to even see Jameis get on the field.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, Bridgewater's best friend was the defense last year as well. I mean, nationally, Bridgewater got a lot of play for being 5-0 without Brees, and he should have. I mean, he did well, but boy, it was the defense, and we've talked about that ad nauseum in this podcast. Well, let's go back to Brees again, and I can only imagine Drew Brees at home, quarantined, watching his Saints in Denver. I asked him how that was. This was his response. You always travel for the most part, but the rare opportunity to be at home, were you able to watch the game with your boys? Did you want to watch it by yourself? I mean, how did it work with Drew Brees watching this game?
Well, I didn't sit down, but I had my call sheet in hand.
Wow. And
as the situations would arise, based on, kind of what I knew from the week and our conversations last night, just try to anticipate what was going to be called. And I mean, honestly, just play the game. I mean, I love the game. Obviously, I have a huge vested interest in what's happening out there. Personally rooting for a lot of guys as well.
Mm-hmm.
But man, just couldn't sit still and was just was like I was playing the game.
Balin, Bowen, I love you guys, but I got my call sheet here. I can't see the TV. I mean, he didn't give me the full dynamic, but that doesn't surprise me that Brees was locked in like that. Was he wearing a helmet? I should have asked him that too.
No, it doesn't surprise me one bit. He was locked in like that. Anybody who watches him, he there's a reason Drew Brees is what he is, and it's not so much. It's not his height. It's not his weight. It's not his speed. It's not even his arm strength. It's what's in between his ears. He is the most mentally locked in person I've been around. The most competitive person I've been around. And anybody who's ever saw the video, I think Reggie Bush put it out last week at our Super Bowl reunion, and all the players went in after Saturday walkthrough, and Reggie, we were all retired guys marveled at this guy we played with. We're sitting there watching him walk through all the plays on air, hand signal to nobody out on the field, go up to the line, make checks with nobody actually out there, and his imagination of playing the game before the game. That's what makes Drew Brees and why he's so successful.
All right, we're not doctors. Brees won't give me a timeline. We have more likely later. I'm not going to include this in more likely, but Drew Brees conceivably can come back after this Atlanta game. I'm not seeing it. I think in part because he has I'm not laughing at it, but double-digit broken ribs, which is insane, the collapsed lung, and it's too soon. And then you have an Eagles team, which is a dumpster fire. Why even mess with that? To me, Kansas City is realistic, maybe, but I don't even know if that's realistic, Shanle. At this point, it's just hard to gauge.
Yeah, only Drew knows and the doctors know, but I definitely think I think we have to have him back for Kansas City. That's wishful and hopeful thinking, because as good as the Saints defense is, the Chiefs are going to score points, and you're going to have to score some points in that game. So I think we need him back that game, especially if it's the number 1 seed is vital. It's very important because it's one less game this year and only one team gets it. And you got to keep winning games. But I think I agree with you, Mike. Philadelphia, I don't know what the heck's going on there. We can definitely continue with the same formula for 2 more weeks of running the ball, not turning it over, and playing good defense against these 2 teams.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of hypotheticals, Justin, you know what time it is. More likely, 3 hypotheticals. The fans love this segment. I'm going to bring in Justin Thomas, bring him back. Scott Shanle and Justin Thomas have not heard these questions, and they're right in front of me, so I have the advantage. But I like to throw these out. We do mostly Saints, but sometimes we have a little fun with the NFL and other subjects. But more likely, number 1, the great thing about this Saints team this year is the step-up mentality. A lot of big injuries. But boy, they just keep winning football games after all the big stars go out week after week. But in terms of the fallen stars, as we look at the final, what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games of the year. Of all the fallen stars, more likely, which one do the Saints need the most? Is it Michael Thomas? Is it Teron Armstead? Or is it Marshawn Lattimore?
Oh, man, every week these questions seem to get tougher. I'm also stalling while I think of my answer.
That's a veteran move right there.
Look, I think the last couple of years we've seen that Sean Payton, Drew Brees can make up for a lot of players missing. But I think, to me, the most important piece or pieces is always the offensive line. We saw when Pete last year got hurt, the offensive line was banged up going into that Vikings game. It seemed like the Vikings were able to get after Brees, knock him off his rhythm. I think with Brees, when he comes back, if we can have a healthy offensive line, that's going to help us the most. Brees can make up for the lack of Michael Thomas, and we've seen Janoris Jenkins step up in the wake of Marshawn Lattimore being out. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is playing really well. I think we can hide or mask those 2 players being hurt. I think it's going to be really hard to have Brees continue to play the way he plays if our offensive line is banged up.
Solid work out of you. The early pauses helped you, I think.
I tried.
In the answer there. Yeah, that was good stuff. Shanle, what do you think? Out of all the fallen stars, which one do the Saints need the most? Is it Armstead? Is it can't guard Mike Thomas? Or is it Marshawn Lattimore?
I definitely think it's Michael Thomas, and I agree with everything Justin said. You definitely need offensive line play, especially when your quarterback has broken ribs. You need Terron Armstead, but even I think if you get him to play good and you get Marshawn to play good, but I think you need Michael Thomas to play great. And I think when Michael Thomas plays great, defenses worry about where 1-3 is, and they double team him, and it changes everything they talk about in their defensive staff meetings. And when Michael Thomas is rolling and catching 10 to 12 balls a game, it changes the way defenses defend this Saints offense. So I'm going to go with Michael.
Isn't it amazing when you talk about Thomas that when Taysom beat the Falcons as the starter for his first win, that not one pass was thrown to Alvin Kamara, Shanle? That just was remarkable to me.
It was kind of odd to me too. And there were people talking out of the building that a lot of guys wanted Jameis to start, probably because he's played more football, thrown the ball more, probably throws the ball better to the backs out of the backfield. And that's not something that we've seen a whole lot of Taysom since he's been, is throwing those halfback routes out of the backfield. But the one thing he did get from Drew Brees was, when you're in trouble, there's a guy who's pretty good. His name is Michael Thomas. You find him and he'll take care of you. So it's hard to fault him for finding 1-3 on the field.
Yeah, I got to go with Terron Armstead just because I feel like this offensive line, they're the reason why this Saints team has been good for so long. And it's the reason, frankly, you look around the league, teams like the Bucks are not as consistent. They're not helping Tom Brady. I mean, that's just such a misnomer in Tampa because Brady has been blamed for a lot of things, but he has a horrible offensive line. Armstead coming back just solidifies the running game. It keeps the quarterback clean. That's how I feel about it. Were you going to say something, Shanley? I'm sorry.
No, I wasn't. I was going to chime in on the whole Tom Brady thing, which is a whole side note, but I just find it weird that Peyton Manning goes to Denver, takes his whole offense, wins the Super Bowl, but Tom Brady, who's arguably the greatest player in the NFL history, has to run Bruce Arians and Byron Leftwich's offense.
No risk it, no biscuit, right?
Yeah.
Wow, a lot of riskets, no biscuits, or however you want, whatever the heck's going on in Tampa. All right, second, more likely. We talk about the stars, and I mentioned it in the first question, but who's the most underrated Saint so far this year? I mean, you look at across the board, I'm actually picking people on offense, and you can go off the board if you want. How about tight end Adam Troutman, the rookie stepping up? How about fullback Michael Burton, key in the blocking of the running game? Or how about Marquez Callaway, special teams, stepping up when Thomas was injured earlier this year? I got Troutman, I got Burton, I got Callaway. You can go off the board, but those three guys in different ways have been really unsung Saints. But who's the most unsung Saint player this year? More likely.
Man, I wish I could pull a player out that you didn't list and shock you all, but I'm trying to think. I think all of those have been really well. I guess underrated is good because they're all new for the most part, except for Burton. That's tough, man. I like the way Callaway has stepped up in the absence of Deontay Harris, as he's kind of had this nagging injury playing not only wide receiver but kick and punt returns. And I know too, Trotman has done really well. I know he got one touchdown, but he's been really great in the blocking. Boy, this is tough. I know you
Toronto more likely.
Isn't
I think who I would pick, or if there's another player I would pick. Look, I'll go with Callaway. I've been impressed with him, the way he stepped up when Michael Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders were hurt. It seemed like all of a sudden he became Brees' go-to guy. I know he's kind of had a nagging injury lately, but I've been impressed with him. It just goes to show, look, Sean is so good. He can find so many players anywhere, plug them in his system. I mean, he's so talented. That's what I guess makes it so hard to pick just one player out of those choices.
Yeah, Shanley, I think when you look at these underrated guys, it kind of reminds me of your team back in 2009, where so many guys caught touchdown passes or contributed. And that's a sign of not only a good team, but a deep team. And he's only a rookie. I mean, Sean Payton has used his whole playbook. But out of those three guys, is there a most underrated Saint? Or maybe you can go off the board if there's another one.
Yeah, I'm going to go off the board, but this isn't my answer, but this is the most obvious answer, I think, is Trey Hendrickson, who has been outstanding the whole season, and nobody saw this coming from Trey.
Right.
But I think the guy that I'm most impressed with that doesn't get a whole lot of love is David Onyemata. He has been a beast at defensive line, at defensive tackle. I believe I saw a stat the other day where he 20 other defensive tackles in the league are paid more than him, but he makes plays every week like one of the top 5 defensive tackles in the league. I'm going to go with David Onyemata.
I was going to put Onyemata on there, but Justin did the ultimate trump card with who's the MVP of the defense so far, and then you threw out Hendrickson and made me look foolish in the past podcast. So I was keeping to the. Maybe I should do layers of underratedness because Onyemata definitely underrated, but these guys are kind of the young guns, anyways. I got to go with Callaway just because, man, he's done whatever they've asked. I mean, when Thomas went down earlier in the year, he led him in receiving that one game. And then he, recovers 2 fumbles on special teams. Kid wasn't even drafted. I mean, he's doing everything out there. So when I thought of this question, I thought Marquez Callaway, but you could definitely make a case for Onyemata. I love the stat in terms of salary. So a lot of unsung Saints, that is for sure. All right, Shanle, you're going to like this one. I almost used this a couple weeks ago. It seems like the last time they played Atlanta was a long time ago. Maybe I was just bitter in Denver about how bad a football game that was in between. But what irritates you the most about Atlanta Falcons? Just their fan base, their team. They're the biggest rival for the Saints. But what irritates you the most? That dirty bird, that whole thing doesn't really flow that well. You got a franchise that's never won a damn thing, and they talk so much, and they troll you, and they've never won anything. Or is it that Matt Ryan has an MVP and Drew Brees doesn't? I mean, which one of those 3 angers you the most, or you can go off the board about why you don't like Atlanta?
Well, I don't think anyone would be angry that the Falcons haven't won a Super Bowl. That doesn't make sense to me.
No, the fact that they talk so much and they haven't won anything. It's kind of like, that's what I'm saying.
Look, I remember growing up. I remember when Michael Vick came in and everyone was like, oh, he's going to be a game changer. And it turned out they were right. I mean, watching that talent was so frustrating as a Saints fan trying to stop him over the years. And then they get a great QB in Matt Ryan. He's been there for so long. It's kind of crazy to think about. They have so many talented players, and that's frustrating to watch. But when you go back and look at like Roddy White and how much he would talk smack and a lot of these other players, I think at the end of the day, it's just fun to root for them to fail. I don't wish any bad ill on them, but,
Seems like you do a little.
I mean,
it seems like you do a little bit.
Like I don't want players to get hurt or anything. No, I want them to lose. Hell yeah, I want them to lose. And I think it's fun too, especially, y'all are older, so growing up, when the Saints weren't good, maybe
I'm a lot older.
in down years, it was fun to root for the Falcons to fail if the Saints were having a bad season. So I don't know. I know every year, the first thing I do when the schedule comes out is look and circle the 2 games against the Falcons. Those are always the best games. No matter if the teams are good or bad, they're usually always really close. You never who's going to pull it out. And I will say one thing, though. That Super Bowl loss is probably one of the greatest things I've ever seen. And I'm so glad the 28-3 meme is still alive and used regularly. If I was a Falcons fan, I would be embarrassed. And that's because that's never going to go away. And it's always going to be brought up, always by Saints fans.
And Falcons fans were probably watching that Bucs game that the Saints just tore up the Bucs and Tom Brady. Oh, here we go again. Maybe Brady will come back. You know what, Falcons fans? It didn't happen. He didn't get in the end zone. They kick a field goal just to get on the scoreboard. Here's my thing with that. I'm so old. I remember the too legit to quit MC Hammer thing, but I didn't want to put it in this because I am old, and maybe you guys would remember that, but maybe I was wrong, Shanle. I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of layers on this one. My second favorite Super Bowl of all time is the Atlanta Falcons blowing a Super Bowl to the Patriots. I think I almost celebrated as much on that comeback as I did when we won the Super Bowl. So I was definitely vested interest in that game. My answer to this question is the lack of respect they have for the New Orleans Saints and the New Orleans Saints organization. It's been my problem is since 2006, the New Orleans Saints have been one of the most functional organizations in all of the NFL, if not professional sports. The Atlanta Falcons, in the meantime, have had head coach after head coach. They've had the only consistency they've had is Matt Ryan. They got that pick right. They haven't won a damn thing. And they lose to the Saints all the time. And not one time can you get somebody in that organization or that city to say, you know what, we're not on the Saints level. We're not there yet. We aspire to be what the Saints are. And they've never said it, never got close to whispering it or saying it. And it drives me crazy. And I think that's why the hatred runs so deep for guys like myself. And it only gets worse over the years because the Atlanta Falcons continue to be the Atlanta Falcons and they continue to talk crap, and that's what makes it worse.
So should I maybe kind of phrase the Falcons fans thing? It's more of a bitterness. It's like a bitterness with them that they haven't.
No question.
Yeah.
No question. I think they're very bitter, and they thought they were going to get on even playing field when they were up 28-3 in a Super Bowl. And I guarantee you those Falcons fans were sitting there saying, man, now the Saints can't throw that Super Bowl in our face anymore. And for them to blow it, it was a double-edged sword that was awesome to see.
And along the same lines, because I'm going to agree with you, my answer, the bitterness, how happy were they about the no call? Because the Saints would have danced in their stadium potentially against Tom Brady, against a team they choked against and won a Super Bowl in Atlanta. And they were so happy about that. But you know what? The rivalry, I get that. It's kind of a separate deal, but that would have been their worst nightmare if the no call hadn't happened and the Saints would have won that game.
No question. And even their mayor said stuff about don't serve Saints fans. They're going to be coming to our city. They saw the writing on the wall that the Saints probably should have been there or were going to get close to getting there. It just, the Atlanta Falcons, like I said, they haven't won anything. And the fact that they can't give you a little bit of respect. And Mike, it's not even, you're comparing two different organizations from a functional standpoint, but from a fan base standpoint. When we played in Atlanta, we had more Saints fans in their stadium than they had their own fans. So, who dat chant was as loud there as it was at the Superdome. And I just can't describe my angst towards the Atlanta Falcons fan base and the crap they talk for the little they've accomplished.
When you played, do you have a story that sticks out about anything that you've just kind of talked about, whether it was, maybe them jumping out to a lead, the fans, the players? I mean, is there one kind of moment where you're like, man, this rivalry is intense and I don't like these guys?
Oh, you could feel it on the field. I mean, I think I've said this before. The cities and the fans fuel this rivalry that the players take on, and you feel it on the field. For me, when I was there, though, the Atlanta Falcons were a good team. We won more often than not, but they had Roddy White in his prime and Tony Gonzalez. They made that trade, and that gave them a chance to compete and win a lot of games. They were a very talented team. John Abraham, their DN, so. They were always really good games. We weren't blowing them out very often. So there was always a lot of trash talk on the field, and there were always good games that we got up for and look forward to playing.
When you finish a game like that and you play a lot of NFL games and it seems like, there's a sportsmanship afterwards, was it a different kind of sportsmanship atmosphere after a Falcons game after all that?
100%. We took a lot of pictures on their field after games and found ways to celebrate certain things after games. We took a lot of pictures because usually that game was for the division championship. We took a picture there on their logo, and our defensive tackle, Remy Ayadel, the D-line took a picture, and Remy may or may not have decided to use the Falcons logo as a bathroom during their picture. So, some stuff like that went down that normally wouldn't have went down in other games.
When I asked you that question, you kind of paused. It was almost like I just teed one up for you there, didn't I?
Yeah. I was like, should I tell a story? Why not? That's why we have the podcast, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's get into predictions. And here's the deal. We didn't have one with Thanksgiving last week, but we would have predicted the Saints anyway, so we all get wins. Justin, you're 8-2. Shanle, you're 8-2. I'm 7-3. Now you have the Atlanta Falcons, who we've just trashed. Give me a score and a prediction, Justin Thomas.
Well, look, I learned my lesson last time picking against against the Saints versus the Falcons. I'm not going to make that mistake twice, so I'm going to pick the Saints to win. I definitely think this is going to be a different game. While I think the defense is really good, I just don't see them holding a really talented offense down like they did last time. I think this could be closer to a shootout in a way, maybe not high numbers, but I think it's going to go back and forth and it's going to be close. I could see the game being won by a field goal. So I'm going to go in the range of, let's say, 27-24. Saints.
Okay. And here's the thing, Shanle. These Falcons are believing with Raheem Morris, but one problem with that theory is they weren't believing when they played the Saints a couple weeks ago. This NFL is insane. This is why I don't bet on football. The way the Falcons played against a pretty good Las Vegas Raiders team, and then you have the way they played the previous week against the Saints, it's kind of hard to figure this team. Shanle, what do you think prediction-wise?
First off, does anybody know if Julio Jones is actually going to play this time?
I think I read that him and Todd Gurley may be out.
Okay, because Julio Jones seems like he gets the Saints flu every year and decides to not play against the Saints. Like, oh, we're playing the Saints?
Oh,
No,
I love it.
my hamstring hurts. My pinky hurts. So
Did you coin that yourself? Is that you?
The Saints flu? Yeah,
Yes.
Julio Jones. I don't know. He seems to get it every year when they play the Saints.
Wow, I like that.
But, I thought about this, and I'm worried about this game. I'm worried about this game because of the way the Atlanta Falcons looked against the Raiders. Their defense looked really good. They took the ball away. I believe the Saints are better in the trenches. Offensive line, defensive line are better. I like the Saints defense to hold this Atlanta offense down points-wise, but I'm going to pick Atlanta to win 24-21.
Wow.
And that hurts doing it, but I got to I'm not a homer.
Mm-hmm.
I got to go with what I'm a little worried about this game.
All right. Well, I'm worried too, but I believe in this Saints defense, and I know you do too, Shanle. Taysom Hill, I believe in him more than you. But here's my thing. I think this offensive game plan is going to be you just throw that whole game out against Denver. I mean, you saw things Taysom did. You got to love what the running game did. I mean, I guess I talked to Deuce McAllister after the game, maybe against Buffalo a couple of years ago. They ran the ball 10 straight times, but that was insane watching that. I don't think we're going to see that against the Atlanta Falcons. Man, I'm on the fence here because I literally have ground to catch. But in my heart, I just don't think that they're going to lose to the Atlanta Falcons. I do think this is going to be a close football game. But in the end, I think the Saints win 31-27. They pull away a little bit at the end. And Taysom plays better. And the defense is going to give up 27 points. But I think they're going to make the crucial stops when they have to. So Shanle, after ripping the Falcons, picks them. And then Justin picks the Saints, and I pick the Saints. We'll see what happens. I mean, I think it's going to be an entertaining game, no doubt about it. But it kind of goes back to this, Shanle, and I was close to picking the Falcons. I think it's really tough to play a team this close, especially the way they're playing, and to beat them. And if they do, they truly, truly, truly own them. Because it's amazing, Shanle, how much the Saints have owned the Falcons in the Sean Payton era.
Owned. That's the best word you can say. I mean, the record speaks for itself, but it's been one head coach versus many head coaches. Matt Ryan's been there longer than a lot of their head coaches. It's a dysfunctional organization that can't figure out how to win. Every year they go out, trade up, they take high first-round picks, or they go try to make a splash free agency signing, but they have not figured out how to win consistently, and that's been the biggest difference. Normally, I would I'm going to just be honest. If Drew Brees was playing this week, I believe they'll win. But I think the Saints are going to get into this game this week, and they're going to have to throw the ball. And I haven't seen enough from Taysom to think that he can throw them to a victory.
Is there a difference between a flu shot and a Saints flu shot?
That's a good question.
Julio Jones better look into that. All right. Well, Justin, where are we on Twitter?
At Dundat Podcast.
And check that out. Check out Dundat Podcast on all the platforms. We're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're on Podbean, Google, wherever there are podcasts, you can find us. Please subscribe. We have content nobody else has, whether it's one-on-one interviews. We have Scott Shanley's analysis. So if you're a Saints fan and this is the first time you've heard us, please tell your friends, subscribe. And if you're a loyal listener, we appreciate you very much. All right. My producer, Justin Thomas, and my partner, Scott Shanle, I'm merely Mike Nabors. We'll see what happens against the Falcons, and we'll talk to you again next week.